There's no question that we're in the middle of an AI revolution, and this is going to touch all of our lives, every aspect. But the question is, how do we invest in that trend? So let's start off by talking about Nvidia's incredible Q4 results in 2023, and then we'll go on to talk about other ways in which we can invest in AI. But also, this being PensionCraft, we'll talk about valuations too. Today's video is sponsored by Freetrade, the commission-free investment platform which is revolutionizing the world of investing in the UK market. Now, I started by saying that AI is going to transform our lives, so maybe I should start with something personal and say how it's transforming my life and which applications I think are so incredibly important. And the first time I realized that AI was actually interesting was when a paper was published in Nature talking about how they'd solved the protein folding problem. Now, when I was a PhD student, this was thought to be insoluble. You start off with the sequence of amino acids in a protein, so you know how it's constructed, you know the order of amino acids, but what you don't know is the 3D structure of that protein. And of course, it's the 3D structure that determines its function, but also the drugs which can bind to that protein. So if you can solve this problem, it's going to allow you to develop new drugs, to work out how proteins function, all from this huge amount of DNA information which we now have because we can sequence genes very quickly. So the company DeepMind created AlphaFold, which is a particular application of AI in order to solve this problem. And it's been very successful. Of course, you still have to check the structure, maybe by crystallizing the protein, but that's quite difficult to do. In the cases where that has been done, it's shown that the protein structures are very accurate. So that application, I think, could transform medicine and also drug discovery if we can work out the structure of these proteins very quickly. The other thing that these AIs can do at the moment is generate images which are quite photorealistic. So what used to be thought of as creative, which is to take some kind of brief for an image and turn it into a concrete drawing, is something which AIs can now do. But my second point here is that we don't have an AI Warren Buffett right now. I think that might happen, and I think it would scare a lot of fund managers if they can be replaced by what is effectively a piece of software. Fund management is notoriously bad at stock picking, so who knows, maybe this will generate alpha at last. But certainly for now, there is no convincing version of Warren Buffett which can be uploaded into a computer. And if there was an AI, who knows, maybe it would be telling us just buy index funds. Now, ChatGPT is great. This is a kind of generic chatty model where you can ask it questions and it comes up with replies. However, I find it very annoying because it does get things wrong. So as a research tool, I've been using something called perplexity.ai, which is slightly different. So I can ask it, what is a large language model? Then it goes to the internet and looks at various sources and summarizes the responses. But what's great about this is that it gives the sources of information so that you know that you can verify each of the different facts. So if I click on this 3 here, it'll take me to this website so I can check where the information came from. Now, I've also been tutoring my grandson, my partner's grandson, in mathematics. This is GCSE mathematics in the UK. And to do that, I've been using AI to generate the problems which we solve together. So I can see that for education, this is a great way to learn because you have effectively a tutor which is infinitely patient. You can ask as many questions as you like, it can set problems, it can solve them, but also explain the solution and the method by which you came to that solution. So let's say we want 3 algebra problems that involve cross multiplication. This is something Archie struggled with. I'm sorry, Archie. I just enter that as the prompt. And it also comes up with the solutions. Another thing which really blew me away was writing code. So for example, if I want to create a graph for one of my videos, I write it in R. But that often takes quite a while. I have to include all the libraries at the top, I have to transform the data often, which I've exported from some other source, and then I have to make it look good. So I've been using ChatGPT via another app called Barely, which kind of wraps it, in order to generate these graphs very quickly. It's often not perfect, but of course I tweak it once I've got the code. And if you use GitHub, which is where people store code if they're developers, then there's something called Copilot, which is just spookily good at generating code. You give it a comment about what you want a function to do, and it just writes the code. If you choose to accept that code, you just hit tab. So very easy to use, and I suspect that'll make programmers much more productive by doing all the boring stuff. And to be honest, many coders were simply Googling solutions anyway, so this has just speeded up that process. Another thing which I think is incredible is self-driving cars, because that really could transform our lives. We could go to a world in which cars are simply a service. You don't have to own one, you just get it to pull up on your drive as you need it. And it'll probably make roads a lot more safe. But that's still a long way off. So I think it has transformed my life so far, but the big question is, how can you invest in it? Today's video is sponsored by Freetrade, a commission-free investing platform which is revolutionising the world of investing in the UK market. Freetrade offers you over 6,100 US, UK and European stocks, ETFs and investment trusts. With over 1.5 million users on board and having won the best online trading platform at the British Bank Awards 5 years in a row, they're a well-trusted trading platform. With Freetrade, investors have the opportunity to manage their investments in a tax-efficient way by opening a stocks and shares ISA. For those looking to consolidate their retirement savings, Freetrade offers a self-invested personal pension or SIPP, so you can bring all your old pensions under one roof. And speaking of ISA and SIPP, Freetrade has a great offer, giving away a free share worth between £100 and £2,100 when you open and top up or transfer an ISA or a SIPP worth at least £10,000 before April the 5th, 2024. Curious how it works? Here's what you need to do. Download the Freetrade app, open an ISA or a SIPP with an annual standard or plus subscription on or before April the 5th, 2024. Top up your account or start a transfer for at least £10,000. Keep your account open with a balance of at least £10,000 and they'll drop the free share into your account within 90 days of the campaign completion. Head over to freetrade.io/transfer to learn more and get started. Remember, this offer closes on April the 5th, 2024. You'll find the link in the description as well. Now, one company that's really successfully monetized AI has been Nvidia, and we just had its quarterly results for 2023, and it was incredible. It really blew expectations out of the water. Now, for a long period of time, Nvidia was known for creating powerful graphics boards that were used by gamers, and these things were incredibly good at calculating things very quickly. So if you play a game, I spent a lot of time playing Pandora recently, and these incredible graphics are generated by ray tracing programs. Now, that image generation process, which generates these beautiful graphics, is actually just a big multiplication of two matrices. And it turns out that whether you're mining crypto or whether you're running one of these large language models in AI, you're effectively doing the same thing. You're multiplying large matrices together. So Nvidia was incredibly well placed to benefit from the Bitcoin mining boom, but also from this AI boom. Now, a lot of credit has to go to Nvidia's management because they managed to pivot their company to provide the hardware and software solutions that allowed these things to happen. But one way to think of investing in Nvidia is the analogy of picks and shovels. During the gold rush, you could have gone out and dug for gold yourself, but a lot of those miners didn't make much money. The prospector's life was a hard one. So if instead you'd have simply sold them their picks and shovels in a kind of general store, you'd have done much better. And a lot of people made a lot of money by doing that. The analogy today, of course, is that instead of buying AI companies that produce large language models, instead of that, you buy the chip manufacturers or designers which enable that industry and which feed it the CPU cycles which it needs to run. So that's how Nvidia has been incredibly successful, by creating these servers and these GPUs, graphic processor units, which allow that to happen. And if we have a quick look at their results, it is just staggering, the rate of growth, but also their margins. The Q4 results were incredible. The total revenue was 22 billion. That was up over 20% quarter on quarter. And their margin was something like 56%, which is absolutely staggering. So not only have they been growing their revenue, they've also been increasing their margin at the same time, which is utterly incredible. And you don't have to go back very far in order to see when the sources of revenue were very different. It was just a gaming company up to the beginning of 2023. But as the AI industry really started to take off with these large language models, which are very computationally intensive, Nvidia's profited massively from their server business. Gaming's still important, of course, but it's a much smaller proportion of their revenue. And according to Nvidia at least, I guess they're kind of hoping this is true, this revolution is going to continue, and the demand for their servers and their GPUs is going to remain very brisk as other industries start to use AI for all sorts of applications which we probably even haven't thought about yet. Now, the market reaction to Nvidia's results was pretty staggering as well. If you look at the amount by which their market capitalization increased, that was $277 billion. To place that in some kind of context, Intel's market capitalization, which is its total value, is just $183 billion, which is less than that one-day increase in the market cap of Nvidia. Nvidia is now vying for third place in the S&P 500, and its market capitalization is touching $2 trillion. The largest UK company, by comparison, is also much smaller than their increase in market cap in one day. AstraZeneca's market cap is $204 billion. But before we get too carried away, one of the things that people also used as a picks and shovels analogy in 2000 during the dot-com bubble was the company Cisco. The idea was, okay, all of these internet companies are clearly in a bubble, they're burning cash, they're going to implode. So instead what we'll do is be clever and we'll buy the company which creates the infrastructure, which creates the internet, and that's Cisco. This is the company that was manufacturing a lot of the internet infrastructure at the time. And as a result of this common belief that that was a good play, its share price skyrocketed. But you've probably guessed what happened. In 2000, the dot-com bubble imploded, and so did the share price of Cisco. And it's never really recovered. So the problem is, once you get one of these hype bubbles, is yes, it's going to transform our society. You can see that the internet has done precisely that. But the companies that we thought were going to profit from it might not have panned out. So that's what I think makes this investment job tricky. It's finding the themes, but also the companies which will allow you to benefit from this transformation. So how can we do that? Well, one way is to buy something called a thematic ETF. Of course, asset management companies know that it's easy to market these themes, and as a result, they can charge us more. And because AI is hot at the moment, there are lots of AI ETFs already issued and lots more being issued all the time. In Europe, for example, if you look at just ETF, there are 2 ETFs listed here which give you exposure to AI companies. One's from WisdomTree, the other one is from Legal & General, L&G. Now notice the total expense ratio for these 2 companies are both pretty high, 0.4% and 0.49%. For your average index tracker, you'd pay usually much less than 0.2%. So clearly the hype has also made it easy to market these quite expensive tracking products. So if you look at the contents of the one from WisdomTree, it's kind of interesting that the usual suspects are there. Nvidia's there near the top. So is a chip manufacturing company, AMD. But there are also some surprises. Companies like Illumina, which you might not think has anything to do with AI. It's a DNA sequencing company. But that's because this is tracking an index which selects stocks according to 3 factors or 3 relationships with AI. The first one, which is the way Nvidia is related, is called enabler. So an enabling company would be one that creates the actual infrastructure which allows AI to happen. So think of this as the kind of Lego bricks, the building block components which enable a large language model. So that could be semiconductors, it could be the databases which feed into the large language model, or it could be something like a self-driving car. So it could even include companies like Tesla. The second relationship is also pretty direct, and that's an engager. These are the companies that create the products, software, systems that use AI. So these would be companies like Microsoft, which bought ChatGPT in order to integrate its AI into its products. And then finally, the most tangential relationship would be an enhancer. These are companies for which AI is not their core business, but they use AI as part of their business in order to deliver value to their customers. So I think that threefold classification is a useful one when we think about investing in AI. Is it an enabler, an engager, or an enhancer? Now, I talked about European funds that give you exposure. Of course, there are lots more choices in the US. So if you look at ETFDB in the US, this is the top of the list of their AI ETFs. Some of these also rope in the idea of robotics with AI, so perhaps that's a theme that is kind of related. So maybe it makes sense to lump the two together. Another way to approach it is to invest in pure semiconductor ETFs. The logic here would be something like, okay, Nvidia's got ahead of the game and cornered the market, but eventually these other chip manufacturers are going to get in on the game because it's so profitable. And of course, they're trying to do just that. So what you could do is buy an entire slew of these semiconductor companies in the hope that they're going to do an Nvidia. The share price of ARM has recently surged, for example, because of exactly that. It's believed to be on the cusp of producing something which is useful for AI and which is going to compete with Nvidia directly. So if we drill into the iShares Semiconductor ETF, which is one that's been around a long time, its ticker is SOXX, SOX, you can see that Nvidia makes up about 10% of the fund, simply because its market cap is now huge. But other large chip manufacturers like AMD, Qualcomm, Broadcom are also part of the index. And here are the funds from Europe, from Just ETF, which give you exposure to the semiconductor industry. And again, if we look at the US, we can see that there are lots more choices. Notice that we also have some 2x and 3x levered ETFs here. I'd probably avoid those. But if we look at the performance of one of the oldest ETFs, which is that SOX one that we started off with, you can see it's definitely outperformed the S&P 500 by a wide margin since 2004. Now, until about 2016, it was pretty much neck and neck with the S&P, sometimes up, sometimes down. However, since 2016, this has gone through the roof, and that's because of the AI narrative, partly, but also because of the tech boom that we saw in the United States. If we break that down into year-on-year outperformance of SOX relative to an S&P tracker, SPY, you can see that gradual increase in the outperformance as the narrative really starts to build momentum. So now let's move on to a word of caution about overpaying. Whenever there's hype around an investment theme, usually people get swept up in it and they overpay. It doesn't mean that it's not a good investment or a profitable set of companies. What it does mean is that if you pay a lot for it, that's going to reduce your future returns. For example, if we look at the price to earnings ratio for this SOX fund, you can see that it's currently 33 times. Now that's very high, and that's largely driven by this narrative about AI. Now, Nvidia had incredibly good results. Its revenue was up over 260%, and that's on a year-on-year basis, and its profits were up over 700% on a year-on-year basis. So its fundamentals are keeping up with its share price for now. But it's set an incredibly ambitious target, and at some point it's going to disappoint. And when you have very overinflated price to earnings multiples, things can reverse very quickly. So if you are going to buy into this theme, I'd say that maybe it's a little bit too expensive right now. You're a bit late to the game. What might be worth doing is building your position slowly when there are pullbacks, or perhaps wait for a big blowout in the stock market when everybody else is going the other way, and that could get you a better valuation to buy into the theme. Because I think the theme is a good one. It's just that you don't want to overpay for it and reduce your long-term returns. Now, I am really excited about this AI revolution. I do think it's going to change all of our lives, mostly for the positive. However, I think it's really difficult to identify the killer apps, what they're going to be right now, because we just can't predict it. If I did have to get exposure to the revolution, I think at the moment what I'd do is go for those semiconductor companies. They seem to be in the best place to benefit from the very intense computation required to make one of these large language models. Now, don't forget our offer from our sponsor today, which is freetrade.io. To learn more about that, go to freetrade.io/transfer. You'll also find that in the link in the description below. And as always, thank you for listening.